Fairy tales. Often whimsical, always memorable. Fairy tales are offered up by cultures the world over as a fine form of storytelling on whose pages can be found magic, excitement, romance, even salvation. Tell that to anyone but the fairy tale's main characters and they'd scoff at you. They might even punch you. What happens in the background of Happily Ever After? Often the fairy dust is reserved for a select few, while the rest of the towns, shires, and villages are left to fend for themselves, or worse, are blindsided by someone else's pursuit of their happily ever after. Their lives often dramatically and irreparably affected by all the magic in the air. Certain stories are so old and so ingrained that we tend to take them at face value. We don't dig, we don't allow our confusions or our curiosity to get the better of us. But today, let's give in to those impulses and examine the very interesting case of one Jacob Marley. You may know him as the ghostly friend of Ebenezer Scrooge who floats in and helps our hero out something fierce, offering him a full-on, no-strings-attached ticket to Redemption Town in exchange for... what? Nothing? Nothing. I mean, what kind of magnanimity is this from someone so loathsome in life that they are forced to wander the great hereafter, fettered in chains and cloaked in general sadness? Why would this, frankly, prick of a man do something so selfless and grand for his crotchety business partner? Well, what if I told you that that was not the only kind of partnership they had forged over their long life together? Today, we meet the real Jacob Marley. Hello. My name is Jacob. I'll begin with a line from a familiar text. Perhaps you've heard it. You've yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. A chance and hope of my procuring, Ebenezer. I ask you, who would engineer such a chance and hope for a common workplace associate? Or in my case, a wrenching, grasping, scraping, covetous old sinner, as they say? Certainly not me. Perhaps this next exchange will help guide you along. As we stood staring out our window at a legion of ghouls floating in space, and he asked me, "What of these ghosts, Jacob?" And I said the misery with all of them is that they sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost their power forever. Forever. I ask you, would you voluntarily forfeit your eternal power for your office mate? Your desk buddy? Your water cooler friend? The answer, of course, is no. No. I left Ebenezer my home because he preferred it to his own. He especially loved my four-post bed. So I insisted, while dying, that he rest in it for the remainder of his days and think of me whenever he wakes. I can't say that I was particularly reasonable as I faded from my first life, but I was in love. Yes, I, Jacob Marley, was in love with Ebenezer Scrooge. It's the first time I've said that out loud. I loved Ebenezer. He loved me. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. I loved Scrooge. A man with a razor-sharp wit, a downright silly sense of humor at times. You've all seen the old fool standing at the window talking to the boy on Christmas morning about the turkey, all giddy and stammering. It'd get like that once a week when we were partners. Successful business partners, yes, but also life partners in a way that our world back then simply was not ready for. I think the only one who ever had any inkling about us was old Fezziwig. He caught young Ebby and I playing grab-ass amongst the fabrics in the stock room one late night. Gave us both a sort of sly smile. And then he insisted that we'd join him for a bowl of piping hot Christmas punch. It was July. The man was a Christmas maniac. So merry. But we spurned him along with the rest of the world, didn't we? Whoever it was, we kept our distance. We kept to ourselves. We kept to each other. And when hiding wasn't enough, we'd lash out in order to keep our prized privacy. You wish to remain anonymous? I wish to be left alone. That sort of thing. And that became our day-to-day philosophy. Loneliness. Get them out of our homes, out of our offices, out of our lives altogether. And so to the world we grew ever colder, but never to each other. We would compete, like the Dickens, pun intended. Who could secure more money for the counting house? It's the only way Ebenezer and I could publicly engage with one another, you see. I could insult him about my newly acquired big money account in front of the clerks and clients alike, and it would have to stand in for when I wanted to hug him, when I wanted to kiss him, when I wanted to smack him upside his head, or take his hand in public. We were accused of being woefully greedy, famously so. That may be true, as we were saving in the event that our secret were discovered. We did not want our fate to be that of Mugwitch and Thornley, two older men who owned a very successful counting house on the other side of the city and were outed as lovers by their chief clerk, at which point their business dried up like burnt toast set in the sun in the middle of a heat wave on an August bank holiday. We were saving in case we got caught. As if we were criminals. Because then we would flee with our stacks of riches to the islands. We'd never give London a second thought. But that day never came. When we bought out old Fezziwig and let him languish in obscurity, there was no turning back after that. He died penniless, you know. We could have stopped that. We should have stopped that. But instead we grew colder still to the world, but never to each other. Even when a whisper of warmth was all we could muster. And that was my salvation. At the end, even after the end, my love, it stayed. And so when I was approached by a tall grey spectre in the afterlife with a voice higher than I expected, and he asked me, "Is there anyone among the living you should like to help?" I said, "Yes, the one I love, the one I still love." I was with Ebenezer that very night, offering him that chance and hope that I began with, "You shall be visited by 3 spirits," and so on. I did that for him out of love. Let no theater troupe ever try and tell you otherwise. We all know what happened with Ebenezer after that. He let that fun, silly side shine through, making rather merry, as they say. He became more generous than I could have ever imagined. Nearly reckless. After he paid for Tiny Tim's surgeries, it was as if it had unearthed this wellspring of generosity inside him. So he started wearing the most garish ascots and socks, these paisley patterns and pastel bright colors. Very gay indeed. It was lovely to witness. Oh, I so wish that I could have done the same. But I had to settle for a sort of vicarious generosity. I stood by his side while he died peacefully in his sleep. I do think because I helped him so, he avoided any wandering in the afterlife. Never felt the weight of heavy chains. I dare say that old fool, he owes me a solid. But I have not yet seen him. Sometimes I visit our old home in the hopes that he'll be there, but to no avail. I so wish Ebenezer were here. Then you could hear our story from both of us. You wouldn't have to settle for just my half of it. I'm sure he's on to a much grander place. Perhaps making amends with old Fezziwig. I just hope that one day he finds the time for me. He will. He must. Until my love returns to me, I'm free to wander as I please. Sort of like getting lost in your favorite city on a rainy night. If that city were the entire world and that rainy night lasted forever. And so my journey continues. May you find peace and love on your journey, whatever it takes you. And may God bless us. Everyone.